Azad, and this is Coffee Connection with your host Aisha. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome director Iram Parveen Bilal to the airwaves of Radio Azad. As you know, she is a Pakistani American filmmaker, she's an activist, she is a entrepreneur, a graduate in environmental sciences engineering, and from Caltech nonetheless. And her first film, Josh, is actually a mystery thriller which tackles themes of feudalism, of youth movements, of poverty, trying to do good among social unrest. And Josh was actually Pakistan's first film to be on Netflix and is in the permanent selection at the US Library of Congress. Gives me great pleasure to welcome the writer, director, and producer of numerous short films, documentaries, and features. And Radio Azad actually started their journey with Iram many years ago, 10 years ago, actually, to be almost to the date, Iram. And when we screened her film Josh. And now she's back with I'll Meet You There. Welcome to Radio Azad, my dear friend.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, Aisha. Yeah, man, you can scream and screen it. You guys did such a great job with, just bringing the community in, which is why 10 years later, I'm back on your doorstep.
Oh, amazing. And we are very excited about our film screenings, which are going to take place on Wednesday, November 8th at B&B Theatres in North Richland Hills for the people in the Mid-Cities area. And then on Thursday, November 9th, back to our old stomping ground of the Angelica in Plano. And just super excited about this film screening. So I want to right off the bat ask you a little bit about this film. What is it about? What do you have to tell the audiences about this film before we get into your journey and into this film, the depth of the storyline of this film? But tell us a little bit about it.
This film, which was in competition at South by Southwest in 2020, is a film about three generations. It's a Pakistani family, but I've been receiving from people that a lot of people find themselves in it. And it's a story of a grandfather, a father, and a daughter. And it's a story about how you meet in different sort of generations and different ideologies. It's a story about the Patriot Act. It's a story about Islam and dance. It's the story about literally metaphorically dancing between various identities, how we code shift as immigrants to fit into different cultures, and sort of finding what our true roots are and defining that ever elusive, term called home, especially for people who leave, where they grew up or where they were born. So in the specificity of this film, I found so much love in audiences where I didn't even expect. So you would think that, we should have the Pakistanis in theaters, but I think that it's beyond just bringing the Pakistanis in theaters. So I would urge people to bring people that don't look like them to the theaters and be remarked at how much they find themselves in the film.
Wow. So, and given the times, I think it's actually very relevant to have a film like this for people who know the kind of films that Radio Azad screens. It's always something meaningful, always something that gives you something to think about. And people are not in the mood to come and see a frivolous film at this point with everything that is happening. So this is a very meaningful film and something that we all can relate with. So, Iram, let's start at the beginning. I always ask you this question, engineer to filmmaker. How did that evolution occur?
I think my answer has changed. I have 10 years more of, lived experience and wisdom since you first asked me that. And I think that the crux is curiosity. I think that curiosity ties everything together. Being a scientist or an artist is not as different. And I think growing up in a household that was full of scientists, it was only natural that I had more exposure to sort of science and engineering and applied sciences. And so that's how I found my way. I was a middle-class kid growing up in Pakistan and Nigeria. And so I got a full scholarship to a place like Caltech. So of course I was going to go. And it was like top of the top, at that specific year. And I came. But, I also grew up on Bollywood. I grew up with my, sandwich between my parents in bed at night, sort of pretending like I'm asleep, but really watching the entire film with one eye open. And I loved it. I remember as early as I was, I think my memories are when I was 4 or 5, and I would just know all the dialogues after watching the film, or like a lot of them, and I would be repeating them on a repeat viewing. So, we would always joke about this. Can I speak in Urdu at all, or is it all right?
Please, Urdu is great.
Okay, I was like, मेरे cousins ये बोलते थे कि यार हम सब गए थे तंदूर पे रोटी लेने, लेकिन इरम के पास एक कहानी है. I would always watch the world, I think, with more sort of curiosity. And, I think I always joke about this, that most directors and storytellers have a bit of arrogance because we feel that our point of view needs to be shared with the world, right? So there is this desire to share how I see the world. There's this desire to spark dialogue. And there's this desire to provoke thinking, and champion people who are in between check boxes, and so if there's a through line, I think, in my films, it's championing the underdog, it's championing people who want to defy being put in a checkbox, right? And I think that also is echoed in who I am, right? I have moved countries. I'm a third culture citizen, and I don't want you to think you know me in my first meeting, or just assume you know me, right? I want you to be curious about who I am, because in curiosity, I think, lies empathy. And we all know that in this world right now, we all need the empathy we can get. So I don't know if that's an answer that satisfies your question.
Well, I'm going to probe more. So, most people who are great storytellers, they like to liven up their friend circle, they're engaging in drawing room politics, or they're keyboard warriors. What actually was your journey to becoming a filmmaker, and that too based in LA, in Hollywood?
So I think that's what Caltech did for me. It brought me all the way to LA. So I was proximal in some ways. लेकिन उस वक्त भी आई थिंक मेरी जहन में, बिकॉज हम लोग ऐसे घरानों में बड़े हैं जहाँ पे पढ़ाई की बहुत ज्यादा एक है कि डिग्री होनी चाहिए, पढ़ाई होनी चाहिए. So I applied to film school, but in retrospect I wonder if I really needed to go to film school. And so applied to film schools. Between my undergrad and a grad year, I traveled around the world. I backpacked around the world, studying why people dance. And it came from the taboo of, sort of how I see dance and women dancing in sort of traditional Muslim societies, and the taboo around it. And part of those learnings and those conversations make it into I'll Meet You There. So you will see that as well in the film. And uske baad maine apply kiya. I got a master's at USC in film. And that was sort of the more traditional way of giving me the courage to be like, oh, I can call myself a filmmaker. But really, I have never been somebody who's been just okay hiding behind the keyboard. I have always, I think since I was a child, I have had this, you could call it folly, bewakufi, ya phir courage, to challenge things that didn't make sense to me, to ask questions, and to just, I don't accept things on face value. If something bothers me, or if something, it's not more as bothering, it's more like lack of understanding. If something doesn't fit in my worldview, I'm curious to understand more about it. And I think in that lies perhaps what you can call the courage or foolishness or ignorance of saying, oh, I'll go out on the street and I'll make this happen. Or I will go out on the street and I'll ask these questions. Or how about I put this up on screen and see how people react to it. And so I would say that if there's something, I think that's what it is.
You are a minority, you are a woman, and you're Pakistani American filmmaker in Hollywood. That's a lot of strikes against you. What do you feel about that right now?
I mean, right now it's a charge question, so we'll keep right now aside as of this moment.
Yes.
With everything going on in the world. But when you are born a woman in a very patriarchal world, you already are born in strikes against you. So I think when you grow up with that lived experience, it behooves you to not constantly think about it. I only focus on what I can do at any given point with what I have. Jo hai odds, wo hai odds. But I've been blessed to beat the odds a lot of times in my life. And so I just continue with that sort of confidence. Of course, I'm aware because when I enter rooms, I usually see that I'm the only person who looks like that. But what I've tried to change there is, which is my motto now, is raise while rising. So, whenever I get into a room, I try and get a few more that look like me in the room so that those odds keep changing, because that's in my favor as well, right? It's not, if you were to look at it in a selfish way, it doesn't come from a selfish place, but I think I want to stop saying I'm the only person who looks like me. And things are changing, they're shifting, they're always slower than you want them to. But I'm not a filmmaker in Hollywood. I'm a filmmaker who makes films. Sometimes they find their home in Hollywood and sometimes they find their homes elsewhere. So I'm a filmmaker for the world, not for Hollywood. And I think that's where I find my solace. That's why my characters look the way they are. And Hollywood aata hai to aaye, nahi aata na se.
Very good. Now, you arrived on the scene with Josh as the second revival of cinema was occurring in Pakistan. So, how did you fare after Josh? Did you feel that with one major film under your belt, things got easier, or did you start questioning yourself even more?
I don't know if they got easier. I think they were as hard as they always would be. And the reason that is because when you make a film and you want to make your next film, you want to make a film that's bigger and better and bolder.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of elevate all the obstacles. So it is always hard. जो आसानी हो जाती है वो ये होती है कि आपको अब अपने काम का impact नजर आना शुरू हो जाता है, और वो then that folds back into inspiring you and giving you courage to try bigger, right? So with Josh, I mean, the accolades you mentioned, but then, the fact that Khana Ghar, which was one of the, nonprofits that was we were benefiting from through the film, impact screenings, all over the world. I remember handing out mahine ka ration in Ramzan to like hundreds of families by my own hands, and to process ki ye jo Pasadena, California mein alfaz maine ek script mein likhe hai, type kiye hai, that has translated into this woman being able to feed her kids for a month. It's just shock. Like, I mean, if you are fortunate to witness the power of art in those ways, you find the ease. So it is an incredibly tough, I say this to emerging filmmakers all the time, that this is not me being jaded, this is me giving you the experience कि आप entitled नहीं हो सकते इस field में. आप मतलब कि आपको एक्सेप्ट करना है कि इट इज ऑलवेज गोइंग टू बी अगेंस्ट द ऑड्स. फिर दूसरे मोमेंट्स आते हैं, जैसा कवि अंकल की बात करेंगे. कवि खान के साथ काम करना इस कदर बड़ा ऑनर था, और ये जो ट्रिब्यूट टूर हम लॉन्च कर रहे हैं, ये भी इसलिए लॉन्च कर रहे हैं, मेरे जहन में हमेशा से था कि ये फिल्म दिखानी है, बिकॉज इट गॉट hit by the pandemic and then it was banned in Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
You should come watch it and be like, why was it banned in Pakistan? I would love to engage with the audience of that.
Right.
But कवि अंकल की टूमस्टोन पे उनका नाम है, उनका year of birth और year of death है, और एक quote है, and that's the quote that I know I brought to him through this film. It's Ruby's quote: out beyond the ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there's a field, I'll meet you there. And when I saw that photo that his son uploaded, I just was shaken to my core, because that is art is inspiration. मेरा कोट नहीं है, रूमी का कोट है, इत्तेफाक से फिल्म के जरिए उनके सामने आया, उनको इम्पैक्ट किया, वो कहते थे ये मेरी करियर की जैम है फिल्म, और उसके बाद उनकी टूमस्टोन पे एक चीज है और वो कोट है. Like, it's just, when moments like this happen in your life, you realize that that's what life is about. It's about human connection. And if you have had the privilege, no matter how hard your career is, to witness those moments, then you keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a quote that was mentioned on my show earlier today that was like, it's all about that human connection from my heart to your heart, basically. That's what, for us being a radio programmer is all about. That's for you as a filmmaker is what it's all about. But the title, tell me a little bit about it. I'll meet you there. Rumi's quote, as you talked about, how does that play into this film, and why? What's the premise behind this film?
So, जैसे कि मैंने कहा, 3 generations की कहानी है, and everybody approaches life through their baggage of age, identity, religion, political ideology. And हर वक्त दूसरे बंदे को convince करना कि वो आपकी सोच पे राजी हो जरूरी नहीं होता. What is important is कि conversation चलती रहे, और आप किसी को coexist करने के लिए कहें कि I can meet you there in a field where we are beyond कि कौन सही है कौन गलत है. I will just meet you there. And the beauty of this quote is कि जब तक आप इस बात पे राजी हैं कि हम एक कमरे में coexist कर सकते हैं, फिर होप है, कायनात के लिए होप है. जब आप एक दूसरे के साथ एग्जिस्ट ही नहीं करना चाहते, फिर प्रॉब्लम शुरू होती है। तो इस वक्त भी अगर आप दुनिया में देखें जो चल रहा है, I was just coming from a community gathering yesterday here in Hollywood about, you know, how to talk to people who don't even want to talk to you. They are so like traumatized. And the idea is find a common ground where at least the valve and the doors open just to be like, okay, here's a shared common ground of existence. Here's some empathy. And हम फिर आगे की बात करेंगे if we feel कि जरूरत है उसकी. So in Rumi's quote and in this film, I think the conversation is that, you know, we may or may not agree with each other, but we're still family and we
Yeah.
got to stick together.
Absolutely. And I think it's beautifully defined in the way you have the granddaughter and grandfather relationship, that, you know, that connection that is forged, the cross-cultural connection that is forged, the father-son relationship as well, which is at odds. And then, you know, I'm not going to give it away, but and then living here, you know, that Pakistani American versus American culture, Muslim versus non. There's so many shades in this film, and I saw it a while back. But it's one of those films that has stayed with me, you know, and it forces you to think along a lot of different dimensions. So kudos to you for that.
Thank you. That gives me so much. I always ask people after they watch a film the next day, did you think about it at all? So if it stayed with you, then we've done our job in some form or fashion. And actually, I think Jo, when the film first virtually premiered, what was very touching for me was middle-aged Desi men reaching out to me and calling me and saying, I did not expect to be moved so emotionally. Or saying things like, I never thought I would see someone that looked like my dad in a film made in the States. So I think those were the things that were very interesting, right? Because for me, people say, okay, you write what you know, you make what you know, but you know, I'm not a middle-aged Desi man. And I think that in order to, with all the research and so the resources and actors like Farham Tahir, and you know, being able to sort of communicate that character finally, and for it to have succeeded in piercing those hearts was uh, very memorable.
So let's talk about the cast a little bit. What was your process in selecting this cast? You have Sheetal Sheth, you have Nikita Tiwani, you have, of course, the legend himself, Kavi Sahab in there, and you have Farhan Tahir. So what was your process? What was your experience with working with all these people?
Well, first of all, shout out to casting directors, Meg Morman and Sunday Bowling, who this was the first time I was working with casting directors, and they brought me Nikita. The rest I had connections to. I mean, Kavi Uncle, when we even started raising the money, I had gone to him. And I remember doing an early audition in his guest house. He used to stay in a guest house in Karachi because he is from Lahore, but he would spend so much time in Karachi filming. So I just went to his guest house. And, you know, in Pakistan, it's like आपने किसी से पूछा, किसी ने किसी और को पूछा और नंबर आ गया और आप एक मिनट में किसी के पास सामने बैठ गए. It's easy. People are accessible there. And, you know, I introduced myself और मेरी बस शक्ल देख रहे थे कि ये कौन है. और उनका पहला रिएक्शन ये था, और आई विल लेट यू गाइस फिगर इट आउट जब आप फिल्म देखें, कि बेटे मेरी अंग्रेजी अच्छी नहीं है. तो क्योंकि फिल्म जो है वो ऑथेंटिकली बनाई गई है, तो जहाँ पे अंग्रेजी बोली जा रही है होगी, मतलब घर पे अगर बाप बेटा बात कर रहे हैं यू नो, तो शायद उर्दू में बात करेंगे. जो नवासी है उसके साथ या पोती के साथ वो अंग्रेजी में बात करेंगे, क्योंकि उर्दू में बात नहीं कर सकती. तो मैंने उनको कहा, कवि अंकल व्हाट आर यू सेइंग, लाइक अच्छा चले आप मुझे बताएं. एंड सो ही डिड, एंड ऑफ कोर्स ही वाज फ्लॉलेस. एंड आई सेड दैट्स व्हाट यू नीड टू डू. आई एम नॉट आस्किंग यू टू साउंड लाइक एडम सैंडलर. I'm asking you to sound like a man who's grown up in Pakistan and knows how to speak English. So unke saath is tarah se shuru hua, and you know, he was just so gracious. And we were a little concerned, obviously, about his health even back then. He was fine, but कि वो आएंगे कैसे करेंगे, you know, उस तरह का प्रोटोकॉल तो यहाँ नहीं दे सकता आप इंडिपेंडेंट फिल्म. अमेरिका में you come and you check them into an Airbnb, and you know, and then there's the shuttle.
Where was it filmed? Where was this film shot?
It was filmed New York for Chicago. It's set in Chicago, but it's hopefully you won't be able to tell that it's New York. And uske baad Farhan and I had been wanting to work for years together. In fact, is film ki jab table read hui thi, I told him, I said, I can't commit to you yet because it all depends on financing and how and who they want. At that point, we were going through agencies, but he drove from San Diego to be in a table read in LA, like on his own. He did it. And that was what we used for the crowdfunding campaign. So he and I, you know, and then it was about dates, and thankfully it worked. Nikita was in a sea of auditions, वो नहीं होता, you just know it. I saw her tape and I just couldn't forget about it. And I kept going back and I knew it. And then, the producers had also watched it and she was on everybody's list. So it was always going to be her. And she's a gem of a person, which as my career goes on, I have to say that the no asshole policy is very important. So you need to work with people who are good. And all these people were just way beyond the craft. And Sheetal is also somebody in the community who I've known for years. And we were meaning to work. In fact, ये फिल्म जो है, ये मैंने अपनी फिल्म जिसका पहला ड्राफ्ट है, मैंने अपनी मास्टर्स प्रोग्राम में ये लिखा था 2007 में.
Wow.
उसके बाद इतनी पर्सनल थी मेरे लिए कहानी, क्योंकि मेरी बहन और मैं after 9/11, I think we turned different ways in terms of our relationship to religion. We had different sort of feelings of how to express ourselves in the world, and she taught me how to dance, and since then she doesn't think dance is something that's halal. And so this film is in some ways a conversation with her that I have wanted to have for all these years. And so very early on, there was a film independent directors lab in LA. We were just supposed to shoot some scenes from the script, and उस वक्त मैं शीतल को कास्ट करना चाह रही थी, आप सोचें. और उसके बाद कितने सालों बाद इत्तेफाक से न्यूयॉर्क में फिल्म हो रहा था. Her dates were available. She was there and she came.
Mhm.
That's
Okay.
it was, I think like with every film, it's a miracle, and like whoever has to be part of that process will show up. That's just how it
Mm.
was.
Yeah. So, what was it like working with Kavi Sahab on the sets of the film?
Very easy, very gentle, very humble.
Mm.
And when you would kind of move out of the moment, you just didn't, he never made you feel like you're working around a legend.
Mhm.
It was always a constant student. He always wanted to do better. He always wanted to kind of just work on his craft. He was so in service of the craft. That's what I will say. And then, he had so much pride in what we were doing. And then he would share his stories of, being banned himself,
Mhm.
of, losing so much money in films that he made that were against the tide and against the grain. And वो बस खुश होते थे कि यार ऐसे लोग हैं जो बना रहे हैं फिल्म्स. और उन्होंने मुझे कहा, जो मुझे एक सीन है जो हम Q&A में भी बात करेंगे शायद, जो फिल्म में वो बोलते हैं कि मैं वापस जाना चाहता हूँ. और उन्होंने मुझे I want to go back, and he's saying that to his son, and he said to me कि इरम, इसके बहुत माने हैं मेरे लिए, because मैं अपनी जिंदगी में वापस जाना चाहता हूँ. काश कि मुझे ऐसी अपॉर्चुनिटी अपनी यूथ में मिलती, शायद मेरी ट्रेजेक्टरी बहुत डिफरेंट होती. I feel he's an artist who sadly was not, like a lot of very talented artists in our country, was very untapped by
Mhm.
the opportunities that the industry presented. And it was such an honor that we were able to give him those moments. We were able to learn from him and share from him. And I think that it'll always remain a void in my heart कि हम उनको एक premiere नहीं दे सके, which is why we're launching this tour. Okay, you know what? Let's just show the world what he did.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, absolutely remarkable. One of the major themes in the film is the targeting of the Muslim community. You talked a little bit about the Patriot Act, the mosque-going community, which has from time to time been a target by law enforcement here. And it is depicted sometimes on screen, but usually it's just one point of view and not the voice of the Muslim community that has been portrayed. Why was this so important for you to bring into the fold of your film? And how important was it for you to tackle this issue?
I think in your question, you have already answered it, which is that quite often, or most of the time, you never see that there actually something wasn't wrong in the mosque. I have gotten notes from Hollywood executives when we were trying to make it in the traditional way, where they said, but something should be wrong in the mosque. Like the FBI wouldn't just go in. And I said, are you not looking at the reports? And us waqt reports nahi thi fully. They were not, out there. Up to itni documentaries hain about like the illegal surveillance of like Palestinian communities in Chicago, like of all these. So it's just because of that reason. I think there were a couple of things, because I was affected by 9/11 in my own family, and how like I felt that in the Muslim community. Suddenly everybody light shine hui. Everybody was like, okay, I need to figure out what type of Muslim I am. Before that, people were like, acha, ya maula, ye kar rahe, ye kar rahe. It was like suddenly, oh, mujhe pata hona chahiye, kyunki ekdam se I'll be in a room and I'll be an expert and everybody wants to know what I think about Islam and Muslims, and suddenly wo chhap jayega akhbar mein. So ek ajeeb kisam ka pressure sab pe aa gaya tha, so people started defining. I think like that was a time where people became born again Muslims, or born again like whatever they wanted to be. कुछ ने हिजाब उतार दिया, कुछ ने हिजाब पहन लिया. So it was a very defining moment, I would say, within the Muslim community, and that's what I wanted to show, the impact of 9/11 within the Muslim community, and then जो traditional हम देख ही रहे हैं, लेकिन Patriot Act again from a Muslim gaze, from a point of view of being victimized, from a point of view of like, how does it feel to be gaslit so much that कुछ है कोई मसला है, कुछ मसला है, कोई मसला है कि वाकई आप सोचना शुरू करें कि वाकई कोई मसला है. So that was the intention. Specifically जो मैंने mention किया पहले कि when I was traveling around the world, and because I wanted to be a dancer, and I never saw that as a path. That is my first and true love. And ek to dance and the conversation on why dance is taboo. And then the other issue was, I remember specifically, this was a few years after 9/11, and I was at a iftar, and ek daadi wale sahab LAPD ke uniform mein mujhe nazar aaye. Like middle-aged. And I just was like, wow, this guy's life must be so interesting right now, because this was like the peak time of like, Patriot Act. And I just started thinking, how interesting this person's day is probably in the office. And these few things kind of melded themselves into what then became I'll Meet You There.
Oh, so next time if we come across you, you never know, we might be the inspiration for the next film.
100%. I think it's always, art always imitates life. And whenever you see situations or characters of extreme conflict, you are drawn to that.
Yeah. So you finished the film, and what was your trajectory after that?
Oh my God, very painful. Very painful trajectory, because you finish it and it's a lottery. Indie films don't come with distribution, and one of the biggest communicators for distribution is sort of where you premiere. And we were in competition at an A-list festival. Like, it's getting in competition at South by statistically is a third of the acceptance rate of Harvard.
Wow.
और वो हो गया
South by Southwest.
हाँ, South by Southwest 2020. One of 10 or 12 films in competition. First Pakistani film in years to be at an A-list festival competition. Like, the last one was Khamosh Pani ya Ramchand Pakistani at Tribeca, and Tribeca wasn't even back then like considered what Tribeca is now, right? So it was like a big honor. और उसके पहले उसी साल फिर सरमत खुसट की जिंदगी तमाशा या तो उसी साल थी, उससे पहले साल. तो it was like an honor. And premiere से 6 दिन पहले जी लॉकडाउन हो गया और हर चीज कैंसिल हो गई. And I had just become a mother, and I was going through postpartum, and I was really waiting for this like moment. And so, now the world was ending. Nobody obviously would care for a movie. But it's like, okay, what do you do with this movie? It was supposed to be a big career launch for a lot of us. Maybe it was the first big English language film. So I was really hoping it would have translated into the Hollywood circles that are impossible to penetrate. But everything was lost. And I think the festival was in no position to do anything with it. So it has been a tough journey. But there were a lot of champions along the way. I was persistent, and we were able to find Level Forward that did a very nice virtual theatrical in 2021, but it's not the same. It's this tour, right? उस वक्त भी जब Q&As होते थे वो webinar लगा देते थे, तो I could never see the people who watched my film, and it was such a void for me. I had to be healed. And the actors were puzzled. उनके लिए इतना बड़ा moment था. Nikita was being launched, उसके लिए, so we just didn't understand why certain things happen, right? And उसके बाद finally we ended up, getting whatever distribution we could, and then we're waiting, and then it got so long. I made my next film, which is coming out inshallah in 2 months, and then literally waiting for theaters to open. And I would say इस summer में जाके हमें कुछ, after the Oppenheimer and Barbie experience, feel like, okay, people are willing to come back. Which is why the tour.
Barbie to bring them back.
Exactly. Barbenheimer, Kavi Uncle's death, that quote on his tombstone, my desire to meet my audiences, and consistently people have been wanting to screen this film, and then I'll have Q&As that last for an hour or more, and I'm just like, people really are connecting and they
Mm,
have not seen this film, and that is what inspired me to be like, you know what, let's just go out on a tour, let's do
yeah,
it.
yeah, absolutely. So you took it to Pakistan in 2022, right? And what happened there?
Got
To
banned.
it, and it got banned. Why?
I don't know. It's completely logical. They say that there was a negative portrayal of Muslims, which is why I'm very curious that you should watch the film, because MPAC, the Muslim Public Affairs Council of the US, which has like international ulama on its board, gave it an award for its courage and conscience on the positive portrayal of Muslims. तो या तो MPAC को पता है कि मुसलमान कौन है या फिर हमारे सेंसर बोर्ड्स को पता है, तो I don't know.
Okay.
It's a very random, ये बड़ा एक मुश्किल सवाल है. So I don't know. इसका कोई answer नहीं है. It puzzled a lot of people, and I think it got to a point of we decided against doing an appeal because we had another film coming on, and it just didn't. Yeah.
Not worth it. Okay, so now you're on this tour, this grand tour, which is being launched in Dallas. It's a tribute to Kavi Khan tour, and the film screenings, which are taking place on Wednesday, November 8th at North Richland Hills, and then Thursday, November 9th at the Angelica in Plano. And tickets are going very, very quickly. You can get the tickets via separate Eventbrite links. It's all there on Radio Azad's social media. And you can get in touch with me as well, 817-897-2217. It's a remarkable indie film, which you all are going to relate to very well. And we're just very excited to do the screening. Iram is going to be here for the screening, and we're going to do a Q&A. And Iram, get ready for lots of pictures. Dallas loves pictures and selfies. So we'll be doing lots of that after the screenings as well. Your
I'll
next...
get my facials in.
Yes, please. Your next film, Vakhri, which you told me a little bit about, and I was just enthralled. Tell us a little bit about it.
I cannot
You
wait.
cannot. Okay.
For you. We have an announcement next week, so it'll be in the
Okay.
trade. So maybe we'll share it with people so they get a vibe of the sort of films that
Mhm.
I am fortunate to make. It is a film about a rebel.
Okay.
And it is a film about a single mother. And I wrote the script before I became a mother.
Mhm.
A widow mother who accidentally becomes a viral social media star.
Okay.
And in her power
Mhm.
of becoming that person and becoming this different avatar, so people don't know who she is. So it's just almost like a superhero story. She gets so much power, and then she starts kind of going off the rails. अच्छा मैं ये भी सही कर सकती हूँ, ये भी सही कर सकती हूँ, इस पे भी impact कर सकती हूँ, इस पे भी उंगली डाल सकती हूँ. And it's like how she gets into trouble with all of that. And इसमें गाने हैं. We have a song by Ali Sethi, we have a song by Eva B, we have a song by Misha Shafi. It's as masala as Iram can get at this point in her life.
Okay. So you
Bold, it's
yourself
colorful, it's got gane, it's very
different.
challenging.
Yeah.
Like it really challenges you, it provokes you. So I'm excited about that.
So you see yourself in I'll Meet You There, and then I think that rebel nature of yours, you've put yourself in Vakhri as well. So
देखिए हर आर्टिस्ट अपने आप को डालता है, लेकिन I would say कि I'll Meet You There was my love letter to sort of spirituality and understanding it. And I think Vakhri is a love letter to the women of Pakistan.
Fantastic. Love it.
It's actually to women everywhere in the world, and men and allies. So it is really about the struggle of being seen and being heard. And what do I get? You know, Adi Gawa.
Yeah.
The struggle of being Adi Gawa.
Yeah. All right. So that will premiere in a few months. We're super excited about that. But for right now, I'll Meet You There. And it's a 90-minute film, English and Urdu. It has English subtitles. And it's a very, very meaningful film. We look forward to welcoming you to Dallas Wednesday, November 8th and Thursday, November 9th. Iram, always wish you all the very best. And we're excited at Radio Azad. Azad and I have been looking forward to this screening for a very long time. And of course, welcoming you back to Dallas.
Thank you so much. It'll be a pleasure, inshallah.
All right. Take care.